All right, I'll just keep the ball rolling. Um, this poem is entitled Hey Little Black Boy, and I'll kind of discuss it afterwards. Hey, little black boy, I heard you flunked your test today. And though you're only in the third grade, the prison system just set aside for you a place. We'll see you in 10. Don't worry about graduation. That's not a prerequisite to join us. Only your matriculation through the suspected hit-a-licks and street fights, the domestic disturbances and displays of your inherent violence. You don't even have to bring shoes and clothes. We'll provide you with those. They'll come with a customized number on them just for you. Concerned about life when you get out? Well, we've even gotten that all figured out. We'll stamp convict on your record as if it were DNA, making it so difficult for you to find decent work that you return to the same block, repeating the same actions that landed you here in the first place. We just hate to see you go for good. The doors of the prison are always open. Hey, little black boy. Little black boy, I heard you flunked your test today. But how could you grasp that common core math when the all too common denominator was missing? Your father wasn't there to help with your homework, and neither was your mother, but she was out working the late shift trying to provide for you and the others. Mama couldn't afford a tutor or babysitter, so she settles for the first willing volunteer, her brother, who doesn't want his nephews to grow up without a male figure like he did, so he willingly volunteers. Ulterior motives follow him in, along with a suitcase full of baggage and tricks and a screwed up definition of babysit. He says, come here, baby, sit on my lap, I'll teach you a lesson while the others take their naps. The 1-to-1 ratio is optimal for grasping new concepts, so come here right now, I'm in charge. But don't worry, I won't hurt you. Even if I do, no one will know. These scars will be invisible, so don't you tell a soul. Lesson number 1, I'll teach you geometry the way my mama's boyfriend taught me. Would you stand perpendicular to the floor while I take my confusion and frustrations out on you? 90 degrees at your wrist. Form a triangle with the other. Curve the straight line of your spine, and remember to never tell your mother. Mental confusion, cerebral contusion, particularly in the frontal where you'd normally be able to process what just proceeded to take place. Problem is, your mind's too small to wrap itself completely around the complexity of this convoluted situation, so your boyhood collapses under the weight of it all. Now, femininity is the only example of familial adulthood you see, further severing the ties between you and your blood-born masculinity. And boys with no examples of how to become men still have to grow up and become men, often with tendencies to flirt with the justice system that was never meant to support them. And though this strange systematic tree seems sturdy and rightly rooted to some, we are aware of its intertwined limbs of liberty with limitations, freedom with fallacy, justice juxtaposed with unjust juries. Strange trees produce strange fruit. And don't believe the reflection the monstrous media cast of you. Its mirrors are shattered, and in its attempts to gather the scattered pieces of who you truly are, your greatness cuts too deep, so advise for the easy to handle shallow fragments. Its inaccurate, disproportionate depiction of you, sir, coming from their sideways, side views, should read, objects in mirror are far greater than they appear. But that'd be too much like right? So you mustn't believe what you see, for blessed are they that believe without seeing. You must believe that you are greater than every stereotype, greater than every preconceived notion that caused that lady to clutch her purse tighter when you sat down beside her. You are far greater than every single negative slur hurled at you. You are not dumb, lazy, ignorant, belligerent, overly aggressive, oppressive, demeaning, or worthless. You are worth more than what meets the eye. You have fathered nations and have built countries on your backs. Your sun-kissed skin has taken many licks and has borne many stripes, but wounds do heal if you let them. The salve of salvation can speed up the process from the inside out. Your suffering is by no means foreign to him. With your permission, allow the great carpenter's calloused hands to mold your calloused heart. Don't let this cold world turn your heart to stone. Let Christ set you free. And please don't be deterred by American Christianity. He's not just the white man's God. You two met long before slavery. Ask Tertullian, ask Athanasius, ask Augustine, ask Clement, ask Miriam how God feels about your black skin when she mocked Moses for marrying a Cushite. So I beg you to, allow him to, unloose the noose to, take those ties that bind and unwind, one generational curse at a time. Black man, it is time, past time, for you to see yourself the way the Father sees you. You are more like him than you realize. You too were made in his image. So from this day forward, reflect God. This poem came about, it's actually like 5 or 6 years old when I first started writing it. And I could never pull it all together until, a couple years ago, because there were so many things plaguing the Black community. And that's what I wanted to talk about and pull out. Being a believer, I know that my hope is in Christ. I know my end, right? But seeing so many unbelievers struggling with being Black in America, right? I wanted to write something to speak to that, but also give hope and let them know that there's already an answer written for it, right? But in order to give an answer, I have to bring up the problems. So I started with talking about the judicial system. And there's so much in that first stanza. I think the thing that sparked this poem was that line, and I don't know if people caught this, but it says, I heard you flunked your test today, and though you're only in the 3rd grade, the prison system just set aside for you a place. So that line came from the fact that I saw a headline that said prisons were built based on 3rd grade test scores. And I was just like, what? So we're already building a system to criminalize someone, a child, based on their test score. And I was like, okay, we have to talk about this, So that's what that line is. So it's this 3rd grader, and see you in 10 years is literally, in 10 years, the 3rd grade is about 8 years old. So by the time they're 18, a lot of kids are already being processed through the prison system. And that sarcasm in that portion is because it seems to me that a lot of times with the prison system, it's kind of mocking its own process. And usually Black and brown people are those that fall victim to that system, right? So I wanted to bring those things out. And like the fact that the prison system sees itself as the alternative to schooling, to proper schooling. That's why I said, you don't have to matriculate, you can come this way. Don't worry about graduation. Just do your suspected inherent stuff. We see you as those that have inherent violence, right? So do all these bad things and you'll end up with us and it'll be okay. And we'll leave it. We already have your, when you get out of jail, we already got that planned out too, right? So I wanted to bring up the recidivism rates and how high it is for someone to supposedly go into the prison system, be rehabilitated, and then are choked out of so many opportunities because that convict is literally on them as if it is in their DNA. They have to put it on every application. You're trying to get a job and you have to bring your past with you for something you've already served your time for. I just never understood that. I don't understand why many felons still don't get the right to vote and different things. It's horrible. The system just, I have a lot to say about the system, but I'll stay. It would take all day to talk about that. So yeah, I wanted to bring up the injustices in that right. Then under that, when we're talking about the Common Core math, right? That was being introduced into legislation when I was writing this poem. So I thought to talk about that because people have differences of opinions on the presence of testing in schools and how that can be a criminalizing situation, because tests don't usually reflect the overall capability or mentality of any child, right? Some people have test anxiety. So now one score has stamped this child, but that's another conversation. And like you kind of mentioned, I don't know, I think it was IT was talking about editing, trying to figure out what not to put in the poem. It was like, I want to talk about it all. I don't know if I'll have another opportunity, so I want to lay it all out there. So some of the things I kind of hid in a line like that, right? Another one being the perpetuation of fatherlessness, right? So because the dad wasn't there, he couldn't help with the homework, and the mom couldn't either because she was work. So now we have poverty being introduced. Now we have children being raised where they're raising themselves because there's no adult figure there to actually help raise them, right? And that's based on the fact that somebody has to make the money. And if dad isn't there, mom has to work, often 2 jobs, often night shifts because they tend to pay more than the day shift. So all of these things that the absence of a father figure or either parent, but particularly the father figure, that absence creates this huge gap that leaves this child vulnerable to everything, including family members or babysitters who have preyed upon children. So I wanted to talk about molestation because I wanted to bring out the what happens in this house stays in this house. I wanted to eliminate that idea, right? And this portion really, I'll say it touches my heart because I wanted to write a story for the Black men that I know who have grown up in, and I'll say chosen to be homosexual, but they all have similar stories. And I was like, I don't want to draw a connection, but what I was seeing was that a lot of them were molested as children. So I was wanting to tell the story that through this, how should I say, through this perversion at such a young age, they grew up confused about who they are, about their identity. Dad is already not in the home. A lot of times there's anger towards that absent father, right? Actually, one part that I edited out of this piece is sometimes I've seen this as well, where a young man is so angered by the father that isn't there that he wants to, mom becomes the hero for everything, and he takes on her mannerisms. And then, so if I have, feminine mannerisms, and then I go to school and kids start saying, oh, you're gay, these are conversations that have to be had. And this is no, I'm not talking about people, adults who make their own decisions, right? Jesus even gave us our own decisions to make, even while telling us what is right, right? I think about the woman at the well, where he read her and he said, go and sin no more. I may be mixing up two stories, but anyway, we call out sin, but we're still confronted with the fact that we have a free will choice to make whatever choices we make. So I wanted to speak to a different population, those that were introduced to a perversion that happened to them. So they didn't really get to make that choice because they were wrestling with the confusion in their mind. So, and then being the medical professional that I am, I brought it, the fact that it was in the frontal lobe is where the contusion was, because that is your processing center, right? So I'll kind of keep moving on. And that child, I kind of mentioned that they're not able to wrap their minds completely around what's going on. And then boys with no examples of how to become men still have to grow up and become men. I also edited out a portion of this where, because the father is absent, then a lot of times rappers and persons of influence on the TV, feel that father figure role and teach them about the streets, teach them about the girls, whereas I've seen rappers who are married in a I guess they're in a monogamous relationship, but they rap about, polygamy and having all these girls and all that kind of lifestyle. So they're not even living something that they are influencing these vulnerable kids, to a different type lifestyle. So I edited that out of it, but I wanted to still kind of bring that into it, right? So then we go back into the justice system, and I know you're aware of, I believe it's Billie Holiday's song "Strange Fruit." And before I was calling it modern day lynching, because I've heard that, in the media quite frequently. This line just came to me: strange trees produce strange fruit. And to see someone else's point of view where they think a system is working, that there is no systemic racism. And so that's why I wanted to, give the juxtaposing ideas as to what is actually going on. So there are liberties, but with limitations for some people. And that's written in the very fabric of our country. When the Constitution was written, we weren't, considered as a full human being. So even though the idea is a good idea, it did not include all people, right? So I wanted to bring the juxtaposition of those things. So after that, we talk about the media. Oh, the blessed media, and how it portrays the Black man. And as I saw that, like I said, I'm a visual writer. I saw like a mirror being shattered. Like there's a perfect image, but some kind of way that image gets shattered, right? And instead of trying to actually put the pieces back together, they're like, no, I'm gonna just get this big old lump piece, this piece that I can handle. They're violent. They're, because I live in Mississippi, and I live in Brandon, Mississippi, but in Jackson, it's more of an urban area, right? On the news every night, they're showing some Black man who's done something, and living in the predominantly white suburbs, I know there are things going on where I am, but they don't make it to the news. So it's like, okay, is this intentional? What is going on here? And then there was another situation where I believe it was Mike Brown. Someone had spray painted on the side of a private school, something to the effect of justice for Mike Brown or whatever. And it in defacing that private school, it appeared that a Black person did it because of the message, right? So they were going to put it on the news. Well, when they checked the cameras, a young white boy did it. It did not make the news. So here we have it, something that doesn't fit the narrative. And I'm like, y'all. So the media plays a big role in how people perceive a Black person. And we know this from, I mean, it's nothing new. If you know about the movie from the early 1900s, what's the name of that movie? I'll think about it.
Birth of a Nation?
Yes, that's it. Where it was propaganda intentionally put it out there to deface the idea of what a Black man is. Oh, he's barbaric. He's chasing the white woman to rape her. And that wasn't the case. It was actually the very opposite of what was actually going on, right? So just how the media continues to attempt to assassinate Blackness, right? And devalue it. It hasn't really changed. I mean, I know we've come far, but it's like, how far? Did we just move from overt ways of presenting things to more covert? That's something that I wrestle with. So I'll just kind of move along to where it gets better. So my talking about bringing it back into salvation, right? So I wanted to lay out all of these things, all of these attacks on the Black community, on specifically the Black man. And I intentionally, once we get toward the end, I say, now, Black man. I talked to the boy earlier, but now I want to talk to the man in you, right? I wanted to bring up the fact of, please don't be deterred by American Christianity. It wasn't until recently that I heard of an early church father, I think it was Augustine, had read the scripture that talks about the feast. It says, go out and compel them to come, right? His interpretation of compel was that you can force someone to be Christian. So I said, wow, is this the origin of where colonialism used Christianity to convert the, the barbarian, I forgot the term that they would use for Native Americans, but to convert them, right? Because you need to be Christian, you have to be Christian. This is what's right. And it's like this painful experience of being introduced to what is right, but in such a wrong way that you think they can't separate that. And I wanted to bring that up. So when I talk about the fact that he's not just the white man's God, because we hear that a lot, and what this also came from a place of pain of seeing people that I know turn away from Christ and trying to find themselves, their identity as a Black person, because Christianity can't be right because of, look at what it was forced on us at slavery is what they said, right? But if you go back to Acts 8, I believe, you see where Philip witnessed to the Ethiopian eunuch. Where is Ethiopia? It's in Africa. So these are Tertullian, Athanasius, Augustine, Clement. These are African church fathers that predates the transatlantic slave trade, right? So I didn't want to spoon feed all of that, but I wanted to give you some names that you may have never heard before, or you'll hit a little Google search. It's like, oh, okay. So he's not just the white man's God, right? But because he has been presented by the quote unquote white man through colonialism in such a horrible way, it's like, I can see why that's difficult to wrap it around, especially from an unconverted mind, unconverted heart, right? So, and Jesus being the carpenter that he was, I'm sure he had some calloused hands, right? So it's perfect for molding a calloused heart, right? He can do the work, he can do the kneading to soften that heart so that you can receive him. And that's why I talk about the salve of salvation can speed up that process of healing from the inside out, right? So that's kind of all of it in a nutshell. Let's see, I see what is my favorite part of the poem? I think it is that part of the young boy, the molestation, honestly, because there's one person in particular that I sent this poem to, that's his story. And I wanted him to feel seen, but also give him the truth of the matter at the end, that Jesus is still, able to heal every wound and set you on the right path. So I think that's my favorite part if I would have to say it, because it's personal. Um, I've received great feedback from the poem. What my personality is to kind of touch on tough topics, but do it in a way um, with grace and love to help it to be received, but not necessarily sugar coated. So it was difficult to share because there is a visual for that second stanza, right? You can kind of see the encounter happen, but I didn't want to soften that because it is happening to children. You know, we're adults saying, oh, it's too tough to, that's too much. But children are experiencing it. So I wanted that to be felt in the poem, right? Um, it says, who is the voice in this piece? I am the leading voice. Actually, I thought about filming it this way. I'm standing there as a narrator, and then you see this Black boy and you're following him through these scenes, right? So I'm narrating. And actually, I had feedback one time where this guy thought that, you know, when I'm talking in the beginning, it's the justice system talking sarcastically. I think he interpreted that as me thinking that Black men are inherently violent. You know, all they do is do the hit of licks, and they, you know, those things. I was talking about how the justice system could see that Black person. So I was hoping that I have conveyed that and switching between voices better. But that's mainly what that was. That was the sarcasm of the system. Because then I go to the end, I try to clean that up and affirm the fact that you're not belligerent, ignorant, and, you know, all those things at the end. So that's the voice of it. It's more of a narrating voice, someone who from a distance is speaking to this child or speaking over this child, hoping that they would see who they are. But as a man, I'm speaking directly to that man, right? Once he grows up, the narrator kind of speaks directly to him. Yeah, I think there was another question. Oh, another reason why I knew I had to share this poem, and my older sister is here. Hey, Jessica. I have another sister who is a single mom. And when I tell you growing up, she did not cry. And when I read to her this poem with no inflections in my voice, just trying to get it out, and she started crying, I said, okay, okay. So this is a thing. This is happening. So we have to share this, right? Because she's raising a Black boy, and she was saying that how she was seeing her son in the piece. So that right there, I was like, okay, yeah, let's figure it out. Let's get over me. Because I believe when God gives you a gift, it's for the purpose of edification. It's for someone else anyway. So I wanted to take myself out of it. I was sweating bullets every time I share this poem. It's gotten better, a whole lot better, but especially initially, it's just this, I don't know, this perpetual kind of nervousness. Not that I don't want people to hear it or that I'm afraid to share, but I just had to get that out of my mind. Like, how do people take it? You know, I was like, this is important. It just has to be shared. So that's me. Have I ever shared this piece with someone who has lived one of the experiences in the piece? Yes. So back to the prison system, there's this guy shared this piece at a domestic violence awareness conference. And Sheldon, I believe is his name. Anyway, he's an older gentleman. He said, he came to me after the event. He said, I was that Black boy. He said, I was convicted of, I think he said he had life plus 60 years. And while he was in prison, he met Jesus. And he was miraculously freed from his sentence. And now he is doing the work to help free other people. He's reading books. He's gotten like multiple degrees, like all of that, you know. And I was like, okay, this is why this matters. You know, he was like, I was that Black boy, and that just impacted me so much. So I just thought that was amazing. Let's take a piece of my poem out of context. Is this a fear that you experience? Yes, taking it out of context. I think that is a fear. And again, I have grace for people. So I shared this poem, like I said before, I work with people who don't have my experience, right? And I've never seen myself as, any different. I wasn't raised to be so aware of being Black in America. You know, I wasn't raised that way. It was like, you're saved. You already know your identity. It is hidden in Christ. You don't have to worry about what someone else thinks of you, right? So anyway, over the course of time, I have had conversations with people who I'm looking at them like, oh, you don't get it, you know? So I think I wanted to make sure that they could get it, right? So I shared the poem with them. That was probably difficult, but it was impactful. One of my Black coworkers texted me one day. I wasn't there because I worked part-time. And she said, they're listening to the poem in the department. I was like, okay, but it is what it is, you know. It's intense, but so I think they began to see me differently after that. Whether it was good or bad, it was fine with me, because it's the truth and I don't regret any of it. It actually freed me because I felt like, okay, now I don't have to leave you wondering where I stand. I'm grateful for where I am, who God has made me to be, and what other people think about me don't matter. That was the theme that I wanted to really transcend above everything else. You can never let anyone else tell you who you are. I've always told somebody, like, if you walked up to my face and called me the N-word, that does not offend me. It makes me look at that person like, what has happened in your life to hate someone that you've never met? And just because of a skin color, like, you're coming at me with so many biases based off of what? You know, so I do believe that people in positions of power, if they are racist, they don't need to be in those positions, and we have to deconstruct racist systems. So I think that's why it was also important to talk about the justice system and how that needs to be broken down. So that's it for my explanations. I don't know if anybody wanted to chime in and say anything, but thank y'all for the kind comments. Yeah. Carlisha, take it away.
Wait, did any of those coworkers or the people that watched it when you weren't there say anything to you about it? And if so, what was that like? Like, I want to know.
Yeah. I'm not responsible for how people receive things, just how I put them out there. So that's kind of where I am with that. I can't change your mind. I can't deconstruct I can't change your experience. And I'm okay with knowing that, but I still want to educate you as much as I can on what my experience might be like. And I'm not even saying that we are monotonous if all Black people have the same experience. We do not, right?
I think that's so powerful too. You know, being just what you just said, you're not responsible for how people receive things, but how you kind of display it. And that's kind of something that I really take to heart. Framing it as best I can so that you come away with what I want you to come away with. Right. And so, you know, even in that, people will still they'll still grab at what they want to grab at and say, you said this. But I definitely relate with what you just said.
Super powerful, Dr. Lisa. I literally just keep having in my head something you said way earlier today or this morning, this idea, right, of planting and watering. That is what we do, poets, right? For everybody here, creatives, whatever, like, you're putting out into the atmosphere what God gave you to put out, and he'll do the rest. Because they might misinterpret it now and learn something 10 years from now and be like, I heard this before. They might not even remember where, but you put it in them by planting the seed. So thank you for sharing that piece. By the way, once you unpacked it, like, I knew it was layered, but my goodness, there's so much there. That's a class, that piece. Wow. That is a class. That is something to be broken down and addressed bit by bit. Yeah, amazing. I could go on, but amazing. Thank you guys for sharing. To those of you who came in to join us, thank you guys so much for coming.